Hello, I'd like to welcome you all here today. Thank you again for joining me. Today we have some exciting subject matter to cover with you, something I love to talk about, which is the psychology of money. Now, although this is only one section, it will really permeate through everything we'll talk about here in the future. That's how people make decisions with their money. It's not so much based on logic, especially for those who haven't had this practical financial literacy training. It's more based off emotions, so this is really important subject. To start off this subject, I want to give you some framework to show you how important money is to our personal psychology. We're going to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs to demonstrate this. Now, we're going to go through several pieces of framework here today. This framework helps us distinguish the various needs that we as humans have. It gives us some very clear details, and you'll find that out later, but basically, Maslow's hierarchy of needs says there's 5 different types of needs that a human person has. At the very base level, it's the physiological needs, and these things are like food, drink, a house or shelter over their heads, just very common things people need to survive. The next thing we have is their secure needs. Are they secure? Are they in a safe environment? Very important, and money directly impacts those. Then we get into the loving, belonging needs. Money impacts many areas, especially relationships and things of that nature. Money even impacts the esteem needs. It impacts somebody's self-worth often. The eventual goal is to get people to where they can focus on their self-actualizing needs. Now, if we're going to do this successfully, it will be a very beautiful world because people are thinking about how they can make a better world, how they can live their legacy and create something that will have a lasting impact on others. I want to break down the other 4 areas, especially concentrating on the psychological and security needs. Just think about not having AC in your house, not having a safe environment, not having good nutrition. That can really impact someone's ability to earn money, to save and invest it, and to learn about personal finances in the future. If that is a student that you're teaching, this is the same thing with adults too. Many adults are struggling. I know we did some work with some organizations that were providing housing and support for these groups. We have to understand when we're teaching these types of people about money, when they have these heavy weights that are really impacting them psychologically, we have to use different techniques to break through. We'll talk about those in a later section. One of the core things that I'll mention many times, our philosophy of teaching is to motivate, engage, educate, and move people to take action. See, this motivation piece is especially important when we're working with people that maybe don't have all their needs met or have some very heavy concerns going on with their lives. So we need to understand where they're at, and this will help us relate with those that we're serving. Again, this is just general framework to show you the importance of how money impacts somebody's needs.
Let's move on and talk about how financial mindsets are formed. This is a real critical piece because you're either going to be helping mold kids' mindsets or adjusting adults' mindsets so they're taking positive financial education toward their financial goals. It's important at each stage that we understand how they form these financial habits. And at the very top of this is the environment they are in. This plays a critical role. So their family, their neighbors, their influences they grew up with are impacting how they handle their money. Now, personally, when I first started teaching financial literacy, the first place I started was volunteering at a juvenile hall. I wanted to do this because I figured this would be the toughest audience. And what I found there was their environment definitely influenced them, but they were open and ready to learn. I was talking to these young adults that were 14 to 17, 18 years old that were in jail. And a big reason was their environment influenced them. They were often very entrepreneurial minded and craved money. And that's what got them in trouble because they didn't know how to channel that. They had family members that were in jail, dads and uncles and gangs. They were living in a place that wasn't very good, or at least giving them the positive encouragement that they needed. Now, one of the great stories that I personally was able to experience there was a young gentleman, and he thought when we were first going around the room talking about their futures, He thought he was going to be a lifer in jail, and he was probably 15, 16 years old, thinking that his future was life in jail. That's where his family members were, and that's what he thought his role would be. Now, he also had a neat passion, which was fixing up cars. And he just couldn't connect with fixing cars with starting a business. He thought there were so many things he had to do. He didn't know how to get a business license and all these crazy things. We really broke it down for him. So we're like, hey, don't worry about that. Just start to help people in the neighborhood fix their cars, build your reputation. And once he had that vision, he didn't think anymore that he was going to be that lifer in prison. Moving on to generational influences. I always find it interesting to talk to people who lived through the Depression era. My grandfather is one of them. And that experience of him growing up where money was tight still impacts him today. He always told us stories about when he was growing up, how this tar used to drip from electric lines. And him and his buddies would go around and pick it up and use it like chewing gum. That was their gum, and he felt very comfortable with that. It may explain why he doesn't have teeth today, but he's very frugal at the same time. He's confident in his finances because he has a lot of money saved. He doesn't have to worry and have that stress. And I see, whenever I visit him, how he's able to enjoy life, take those trips as he wants. Anything that comes up, he's able to do. He doesn't have to worry about money. He's secure, which is a great thing. That's the lifestyle he chose, and it influences me to this day. Also, a very big impact are those role models in our lives. And it's really critical. If you're listening and you're a parent out there, you are a role model. You need to talk to your kids about money. Teachers, coaches, volunteers, all of you are taking on that role model persona. So you're having an impact on those you serve. And you could be a role model not only for kids, but for adults as well. We can lead by example. You could be a role model to your friends, your peers, your relatives. So take on that challenge and be that positive role model out there. And again, for you parents, you need to talk to your kids about money. Bottom line, I know a lot of parents are scared to do this because they don't have the skills or expertise or knowledge, but you listening do. And encourage your friends with kids to have that conversation about money with their children. This is very, very critical, especially to this day, because what are kids out there facing today? Advertiser messages. They're being bombarded. When I grew up, we had TV, radio, billboard ads. Now they're getting inundated with over 1 million messages by the time they're 18 to make a purchase. They see it on their cell phone. They see it on the internet. Advertising messages are everywhere, and they're strategic now. There's a lot of psychology and a lot of studies and research that goes into these messages. They're getting craftier. You turn on any kids programming in the morning, and you're getting these kids to influence their parents to buy. The parents are influenced to buy also on a wide scale as they're out and shopping with their kids and different things like that. So there's a huge impact out there from advertisers, even you personally. You may see a nice car ad and say, hey, I want that new car. I want that in my life. And you see people are impacted by these advertisers' messages day in and day out. They can't afford that new $100,000 car, yet they buy it. Why is that? Well, many reasons, but I think that advertisers' influences messages have a significant impact on the purchases people make out there today.
Let's talk about how financial mindsets are reinforced. All the things we just talked about help shape our relationship toward money and are the start of financial habits. These habits may be positive or negative. However, as you remember from the statistics we talked about in the last video, most people get off to the wrong foot financially, and these habits are often reinforced as we mature. Well, again, we come into environment, the network and circle of friends. This picture right here always reminds me that I have friends that love to go shopping, and when they get together, they are in trouble because they spend a lot of money shopping. Influencers. This is really interesting. I've been paying a lot of attention to this recently. So back in the 50s and 60s, they said, Well, there's a saying that says, keep up with the Joneses. Well, a very good point is that today, with Facebook and different social media, everybody is the Joneses. Nobody puts pictures out on Facebook of doing something cheap. It's always a vacation or something cool, a nice night out to dinner. So all these things are nice new influences that we have in our lives. Oh, so-and-so has that. I want to have it too. Or more peer influence going on there today. Then, of course, we have people in the cubicle right next to them. That's a big thing as well. Workplace has definitely influenced people, and it's who you associate with and having that influence on you. It's also who your audience is. Who are they hanging out with? Who are your circle of friends? What are they hearing from other people? Again, it always goes back to education. This is such a huge industry. Most people never received any personal financial education ever, so it's really important that we educate them at all ages. We'll be talking later at this event about our holistic approach to teaching financial literacy. What we mean by this is that we want to wrap up everybody in this education. So if we're reaching kids about money, we want to reach their parents, teachers, and others involved. If we're talking to seniors about money, we want to reach their kids and others involved. We really want to make it a family-type thing and expanding it even to their friends and peers and different things of that nature. Past experience with money. This is especially big with adults. Many adults have made financial mistakes. Their walls are up, often when it comes to learning about money. And again, I talked about kids before being influenced by seeing their parents arguing about money and different things. So it's all about the impact on how their mindsets are reinforced. We touched on advertisers' messages, emotional attachment to finances. This builds and grows over time. Then, of course, we have positive or negative habits that get reinforced. We actually will be talking about that and showing you some of the cycles on how habits are formed. Let's move on here. All of these factors can reinforce financial behavior. The good news is that when we help people understand why they are making a decision that might not be the best for them, then they can work on that issue.
I want to move on to the positive and negative psychological impact that we can have with money. This is an activity. I want you to actually do this in your workbook. I want you to think about some of the factors that contribute to your target market's financial psychology. Think about what they did as a kid, as a teen, and even as an adult, and how it will impact them in their golden years. Again, what you write down can be bullet point sentences or whatever is easiest for you. But write down some of these events or situations that you think are impacting the audience you serve through the various stages of their life. I'll share with you this example. Imagine a kid that receives everything he wants without having to work for it. He throws tantrums and his parents cave in. As a teen, his parents continue to reinforce these patterns by giving him credit card to use without consequences. With this example, what type of spending patterns do you think this individual will have as an adult? Well, my guess is he will grow into someone that doesn't have appreciation for the value of a dollar, an overspender, and maybe a struggling individual financially. Of course, these patterns can change, but it takes a desire to change. Now, with your audience, what are some of those things that are influencing them in a positive and in a negative way? Right now, pause the video and write down a timeline that documents the decisions they make and how it impacts their financial psychology. Start thinking about how your target audience, what it is, or the financial habits that they picked up as a kid. What are some of the things that they will experience as they age? Now be creative and really think about your target audience and have fun with this activity. Hit pause and start writing. These activities are critical so you can truly get into the mindset of the clientele that you serve. Thanks for pausing the video and completing the lesson. Now, we will be moving on to helping you quantify a person's psychological state.
Being able to assess where your participants are in their willingness to change and adopt positive financial habits is important. It will impact all areas of your programming, how you teach, curriculum used, and the course design, just to name a few. As you learned already, when it comes to money management, people are impacted on many levels. To help us measure how they've been impacted, we'll take a look at the trans-theoretical model of behavior change. This is a really important model we use for several reasons. Number one, it helps us measure a program success. Number two, it helps us understand the actual client, the end user that we're serving at the time.
Ideally, we would want to conduct a survey prior to the event to gain an understanding of the audience. Sometimes we may not have the luxury of gaining this data prior to the event. As you get more skilled, you'll be able to assess your audience on the fly and make appropriate changes to your presentation. And what this model does, it helps a person's willingness to change. Are they ready to change? Or are they not ready to change? We can gather the data needed to make this assessment in several ways. Number one, we can use more of that formal type survey, so we can actually send them out a survey, have them complete it, and assess the questions. Number two, we can have some informal discussions or even formal ones with more like focus groups and things of that nature. And even just pressing palms, getting to talk to them, getting to know them, any of those ways are acceptable. Number three, you can always talk to the people that have worked with these individuals closely. Those that have a close relationship with your target audience can provide insight you can use to help formulate your assessment.
Let's walk through these different stages of change right now. And the first one is the pre-contemplation stage. And in this stage, this person does not want to make a change. They don't see the benefits of teaching financial literacy. They don't understand why they'd even want to waste their time. They're just done. They don't want to change. Maybe they've given up hope. Maybe they have so many problems, they don't want to think about it. They associate so much pain with money. They don't want to think about doing anything. This is your pre-contemplation stage. And in this stage, if you sit them down in a room all day and teach them a lot of lessons, do you think that they will actually leave with a benefit and actually learn from that? Or do you think it would be worse because they'll be turned off more?
If you ask someone, what benefits do you associate with learning about money? If they say nothing, we can definitely put them into a category. For people in this stage, they don't see the benefit and they don't really want to face reality oftentimes. With people in the pre-contemplation stage, we don't just forget about them, but they would not respond well to an in-depth course. For those looking for strong positive data from the events for grants or other funding options, this may not want to invite this type of group. Initially, when you're trying to have good measurement results to prove your program, you ideally would have people in later stages of this model. To help people in the pre-contemplation stage, we utilize here a longer-term awareness strategy. We provide them marketing material and teaser promotions that raise awareness about the benefits in a subtle way. And even what we like to utilize is the peer influence. So maybe some of their peers are further down the stage of change, and they can start to hear it from them. Maybe see some marketing pieces over time. Hopefully we can get them into this next stage, which is the contemplation stage. And if this stage, they're starting to think about things. They're starting to think, hey, is my behavior problematic? Is this not taking me the direction I want to go? So they're starting to think about changing this time. Now they can stay here for a long time, we don't know. But if you use heavily benefit-driven, again, advertising, marketing things that will draw them in, that will be beneficial.
Your main goal with people in this stage is to move them to the next stage, contemplation.
In the contemplation stage, we're going to focus on the benefits. We want to help them understand why they are here and the benefits that they can experience. Getting to know their dreams, their goals, and their aspirations, and then giving them some real-life education so they leave with something tangible that they can actually use, and some simple steps, nothing major. We're not going to have them come to an event and immediately get them into some heavy activities like completing their budget, but we're going to have them take a very simple step that we know that they can accomplish. And if we have multiple times with them, what we're going to see is that they will develop along with the program. but we need to start them on a training wheels program before we just push them out on the bike and let them go. So let's say the participant finally got past the pre-contemplative stage and they actually attend an event. The first thing they hear from an untrained educator is calculate your net worth. Well, I have to say this is probably a highly emotional task that causes a lot of panic in people. So what do you think will happen to the participant? They likely would kind of tune it out and could actually drive them back into the pre-contemplative stage. The average financial educator is unaware of this and often turns people off in the learning process. It actually takes a very trained educator to ensure that they aren't harming the participants, and this can actually do some major damage to a person. It's really important in this stage and all the stages that we will cover that we are benefiting them and not pushing them back into further regression.
The next stage, preparation. Now we're starting to get somewhere. People are starting to think about making a move. As you know, people are procrastinators. They can last in the stage for 50 years. So it's really important, again, in this stage that we give them the exact steps to take. So going back to our overall training model, motivation. We're still going to use the motivational aspects, a little less than we did on the previous stage, but still it's incorporated into everything we do. We teach a lot with benefits, and you'll find that in later classes. Then we're going to engage them. We're going to get them engaged in this learning process and obviously educate them, and we're going to move them to action.
Take a little step after class, and that will take them from the preparation stage to the next stage where they're going to start to see some results, which is the action stage. This is cool because once people see positive results in their life, then they're self-motivated. We're educators, but we're also motivators. Now, you don't have to be the Tony Robbins type of energy style, but you can motivate your own way. You know, the great thing about Tony Robbins and other inspirational speakers is they focus less on motivating people and teach people how to motivate themselves. Again, we're going to be learning these techniques later. Teaching with benefits and things that will get them to the action stage. This is critical.
Again, we're going to feed them the step-by-step guide so they're not wasting their time. If they don't have that direction, they can be doing 100 different things. So many times people are taking action, but they're taking action on the wrong things. As financial educators, it's your role to make sure that they're taking action on the specific thing that will get them toward their end results the fastest. That's our role here. And they're going to be motivated, like you see here in the picture. Approved credit application, maybe their interest rates go down. Maybe they paid off a credit card. All of these things are exciting. If you think back to the last event when we talked about how all of the different aspects of financial literacy are tied together, the credit, the assets, the debt, and the income, how that's all tied together. When they see that moving in a positive direction, it makes a big difference. And then your role as a motivator can decrease quite a bit because they're going to be pushing you. They're going to be calling you, and they're going to be saying, hey, what can I do now to continue this? This is exciting. I see a difference in my family and me and all that stuff. So it's a great phase, and it's fun to work with people in that phase. That's why I like teaching this class, because all of you right now are in the action phase, which is great. You have all taken action. You are all here because of that. You're in the action phase. You're moving forward. And I love talking with people like that because I feel your enthusiasm and passion. And when you teach financial literacy to an end user, that's what you're going to find as well.
The next phase we come to is the maintenance phase. Now, people have already seen positive results. They've already started to take action, and things are going really well. In this maintenance phase, they're not hitting all areas of personal finance at once. Maybe they've rebuilt their credit, and maybe their debt is being reduced significantly. Maybe their income is still a problem, and their assets are still a problem. So they're only maintaining a part of their personal finances, but not all of them. This maintenance phase, again, you can see it in some aspects, but not all. Eventually, the goal is to get people to where they're maintaining a very positive and overall beneficial structure for them throughout their lifetime. This phase is really important in that we help them develop these habits, which are critical. We need to keep them on course and to help them overcome overconfidence. We need to be careful. People get overconfident. They get overjoyed, over-emotional, and if anything bad happens, sometimes people shut down and go all the way back. They may be doing really well. The stock market takes a hit. they lose half of their 401k overnight. Then they go into a state of depression and worry and stress and all this stuff, and they revert all the way back to the beginning. It's really important that we set their expectations properly with everything we do with teaching. We don't overpromise benefits to them. In fact, we want to lay out the course as real as possible while leading with benefits. Hey, it is going to take some work. It is going to take some effort. You'll probably experience some setbacks. You may think that everything is going great, but when you have those setbacks, you realize that's just part of it. That's part of money. That's part of finance. There's an ebb and a flow to it. So this phase is really important. We set the proper expectations and we get people focused on longer-term results, which they're working towards.
The termination phase is often what we consider success of a long-term financial literacy program. Let's compare this with smoking. If somebody is, say, a smoker for 20, 30 years and they quit, well, it's the termination phase is where they can walk by somebody else smoking and not have that craving, not have that desire to pick up a cigarette. In fact, it may be the phase where they walk by and say, hey, that stinks or that's gross. The termination phase is when we have formed those new habits and they're not going to revert back to some of their old destructive financial habits. Maybe if there were overspenders before, they're not reverting back to those negative spending habits. They're in a more secure position. Maybe they haven't achieved total financial wellness, but they're definitely on the path to doing so, and they've developed positive financial behaviors. And also in this phase, they're starting to experience a certain level of security. They have more confidence, not overconfidence, just a knowing that they know their plan and they can work toward it. They have the knowledge and skill sets needed. Many of them will say, hey, I feel good financially. I'm not worried. And I have a clear direction on where I want to go. This is the termination phase. And if you're doing a longer term financial literacy program, this is definitely where you want to get your participants to go. Let's do a quick recap here and go back through this entire trans-theoretical model of behavior change. Pre-contemplation, again, that's when somebody doesn't want to change. It's going to be really hard to sit them in a class or get them to take any action. So with them, we may want to engage them in a longer-term awareness strategy. In the contemplation stage, they're starting to think about it. They're starting to think, hey, maybe I can make these changes in my life. In this phase, we can use heavy benefit-driven teaching instruction to get them to the next phase. Because again, we don't want to divert them and make them go back to the pre-contemplation stage. The preparation stage is where they begin to prepare and get ready to make changes in their life. Again, people can be there for years. We talked about procrastination in this stage, so it's our role as an educator to push them into the next phase, which is the action phase. In the action phase, they're starting to take some steps. They may be starting to experiment and try some new things, and they're starting to get benefits from the action they're taking. Often this phase will help propel them forward because they're seeing positive momentum, and they're going to get to the next stage, which is the maintenance phase. In the maintenance phase, again, our role as an educator is to continue to help them instill those habits that they've developed. Many people here still can revert back, so we want to still point out the benefits and the positive experiences that they are enjoying. So we want to continue to push them forward, propel them to the next stages so we can eventually get them to the termination phase where they've adopted those habits into their life. So that's a quick recap of the trans-theoretical model of behavior change. I invite you to incorporate that into your lessons and activities. You really get to know your participants on a deeper level, and you're a more effective educator.
Thank you once again for joining us today. By now, you understand there's a deep connection with money and one's personal psychology. In our next video, we will continue to explore these connections and how their emotions are involved in making financial decisions. Review the notes in the class, then move on to the next video in this professional development series.